Hi everybody, are you ready to finish our Percy Jackson book? Well, let's get started. Chapter 21, I Settle My Tab. It's funny how humans can wrap their mind around things and fit them into their version of reality. Sharon had told me that long ago. As usual, I didn't appreciate his wisdom until much later. According to the LA News, the explosion at the Santa Monica beach had been caused when a crazy kidnapper fired a shotgun at a police car. He accidentally hit a gas main that ruptured during the earthquake. This crazy kidnapper, aka Ares, was the same man who had abducted me and two other adolescents in New York and brought us cross-country on a 10-day odyssey of terror. Poor little Percy Jackson wasn't an international criminal after all. He had caused a commotion on the Greyhound bus in New Jersey trying to get away from his captor, and afterward, witnesses would even swear they had seen the leather-clad man on the bus. Why didn't I remember him before? The crazy man had caused the explosion at the St. Louis Arch. After all, no kid could have done that. A concerned waitress in Denver had seen the man threatening his abductees outside her diner, gotten a friend to take a photo, and notified the police. Finally, brave Percy Jackson, I was beginning to like this kid, had stolen a gun from his captor in Los Angeles and battled him in a shotgun to rifle on the beach. Police had arrived just in time. But in the spectacular explosion, 5 police cars had been destroyed and the captor had fled. No fatalities occurred. Percy Jackson and his 2 friends were safely in police custody. The reporters fed us this whole story. We just nodded and acted tearful and exhausted, which wasn't hard, and played victim kids for all the cameras to see. All I want, I said, choking back my tears, is to see my loving stepfather again. Every time I saw him on TV calling me a delinquent punk, I knew somehow we would be okay. And I know he'll want to reward each and every person in this beautiful city of Los Angeles with a free major appliance from his store. Here's the phone number. The police and reporters were so moved they passed around the hat and raised money for 3 tickets on the next plane to New York. I knew there was no choice but to fly. I hoped Zeus would cut me some slack considering the circumstances. But still, it was hard to force myself to board the flight. Takeoff was a nightmare. Every spot of turbulence was scarier than a Greek monster. I didn't unclench my hands from the armrest till we touched down safely in LaGuardia. The local press was waiting for us outside security, but we managed to evade them thanks to Annabeth, who lured them away in her invisible Yankees cap, shouting, "They're over here by the frozen yogurt! Come on!" then rejoined us at baggage claim. We split up at the taxi stand. I told Annabeth and Grover to go back to Half-Blood Hill and let Sharon know what had happened. They protested, and it was hard to let them go after all we had been through, but I knew I had to do the last part of the quest by myself. If things went wrong, if the gods didn't believe me, I wanted Annabeth and Grover to survive to tell Sharon the truth. I hopped in a taxi and headed to Manhattan. 30 minutes later, I walked into the lobby of the Empire State Building. I must have looked like a homeless kid with my tattered clothes, my scraped-up face. I hadn't slept in at least 24 hours. I went up to the guard at the front desk and said, 600th floor. He was reading a huge book with a picture of a wizard on the front. I wasn't too much into fantasy, but the book must have been good because it took the guard a while to look up. "No such floor, kiddo." He gave me a vacant smile. "Sorry?" "You heard me." I was about to decide this guy was just a regular mortal and that I'd better run for it before he called the straitjacket patrol. Then he said, "No appointment, no audience. Kiddo, Lord Zeus doesn't see anyone unannounced." "Oh, I think he'll make an exception." I slipped off my backpack and unzipped the top. The guard looked inside at the metal cylinder, not getting what it was for a few seconds. Then his face went pale. "That isn't—" "Yes, it is," I promised. "You want me to take it out and—" No. He scrambled out of his seat, fumbled around in his desk for a key card, then handed it to me. "Insert this in the security slot. Make sure nobody else is in the elevator with you." I did as he told me. As soon as the elevator doors closed, I slipped the key into the slot. The card disappeared and a new button appeared on the console, a red one that said 600. I pressed it and waited and waited. Music played. Raindrops keep falling on my head. Finally, ding, the doors slid open. I stepped out and almost had a heart attack. I was standing on a narrow stone walkway in the middle of the air. Below me was Manhattan, from the height of an airplane. In front of me, white marble steps wound up the spine of a cloud into the sky. My eyes followed the stairway to its end, where my brain just could not accept what I saw. "Look again," my brain said. "We're looking," my eyes insisted. "It's really there." From the top of the clouds rose the decapitated peak of a mountain, its summit covered with snow. Clinging to the mountainside were dozens of multi-level palaces, a city of mansions, all with white columned porticos, gilded terraces, bronze braziers glowing 1,000 fires. Roads wound crazily up to the peak where the largest palace gleamed against the snow. Precariously perched gardens bloomed with olive trees and rose bushes. I could make out an open-air market filled with colorful tents, a stone amphitheater built to one side of the mountain, a hippodrome, and a coliseum on the other. It was an ancient Greek city, except it wasn't in ruins. It was new and clean and colorful, the way Athens must have looked 2,500 years ago. "This place can't be here," I told myself. The tip of a mountain hanging over New York City like a billion-ton asteroid? How could something like that be anchored above the Empire State Building, in plain sight of millions of people, and not get noticed? But here it was, and here I was. My trip through Olympus was a daze. I passed some giggling wood nymphs who threw olives at me from their garden. Hawkers in the middle of the market offered to sell me ambrosia on a stick, and a new shield, and a genuine glitter-weave replica of the Golden Fleece, as seen on Hephaestus TV. The 9 muses were tuning their instruments for a concert in the park, while a small crowd gathered, satyrs and naiads, and a bunch of good-looking teenagers who might have been minor gods and goddesses. Nobody seemed worried about an impending civil war. In fact, everybody seemed in a festive mood. Several of them turned to watch me pass and whispered to themselves. I climbed the main road towards the big palace at the peak. It was a reverse copy of the palace in the underworld. There, everything had been black and bronze. Here, everything glittered white and silver. I realized Hades must have built his palace to resemble this one. He wasn't welcome in Olympus except on the winter solstice, so he built his own Olympus underground. Despite my bad experience with him, I felt a little sorry for the guy. To be banished from the place seemed really unfair. It would make anybody bitter. Steps led up to a central courtyard. Past that, the throne room. Room really isn't the right word. The place made Grand Central Station look like a broom closet. Massive columns rose to a domed ceiling, which was gilded with moving constellations. 12 thrones built for beings the size of Hades were arranged in an inverted U, just like the cabins at Camp Half-Blood. An enormous fire cackled in the central earth pit. The thrones were empty except for the 2 at the end, the head throne on the right and the one to its immediate left. I didn't have to be told who the 2 gods were sitting there, waiting for me to approach. I came towards them, my legs trembling. The gods were in giant human form, as Hades had been, but I could barely look at them without feeling a tingle, as if my body were starting to burn. Zeus, the lord of the gods, wore a dark blue pinstripe suit. He sat on a simple throne of solid platinum. He had a well-trimmed beard, marbled gray, and black like a storm cloud. His face was proud and handsome and grim, his eyes rainy gray. As I got nearer to him, the air cackled and smelled of ozone. The god sitting next to him was his brother, without a doubt, but he was dressed differently. He reminded me of a beachcomber from Key West. He wore leather sandals, khaki Bermuda shorts, and a Tommy Bahama shirt with coconuts and parrots all over it. His skin was deeply tanned, his hands scarred like an old-time fisherman. His hair was black, like mine. His face had the same brooding look that had always gotten me branded a rebel. But his eyes, sea green like mine, were surrounded by sun crinkles that told me he smiled a lot, too. His throne was a deep-sea fisherman's chair. It was the simple swiveling kind, with black leather seat, built-in holster for a fishing pole. But instead of a pole, the holster held a bronze trident, flickering with green light around the tips. The gods weren't moving or speaking, but there was a tension in the air, as if they had just finished an argument. I approached the fisherman's throne and knelt at its feet. "Father?" I dared not look up. My heart was racing. I could feel the energy emanating from the 2 gods. If I said the wrong thing, I had no doubt they could blast me into dust. To my left, Zeus spoke. Should you not address the master of this house first, boy? I kept my head down and waited. Peace, brother, Poseidon said. His voice stirred my oldest memory, that warm glow I remembered as a baby, the sensation of this god's hand on my forehead. The boy defers to his father. This is only right. You still claim him, then? Zeus asked menacingly. You claim this child who you sired against our sacred oath? I have admitted my wrongdoing, Poseidon said. Now I would hear him speak. Wrongdoing? A lump welled up in my throat. Was that all I was? A wrongdoing? A result of a god's mistake? I have spared him once already, Zeus grumbled, daring to fly through my domain. I should have blasted him out of the sky for his impudence. And risk destroying your own master bolt? Poseidon asked calmly. Let's hear him out, brother. Zeus grumbled some more. I shall listen, he decided. Then I shall make up my mind whether or not to cast this boy down from Olympus. Perseus, Poseidon said, look at me. I did, and I wasn't sure what I saw on his face. There was no clear sign of love or approval, nothing to encourage me. It was like looking at the ocean. Some days you could tell what mood it was in. Most days, though, it was unreadable and mysterious. I got the feeling Poseidon didn't really know what to think of me. He didn't know whether he was happy to have me as a son or not. In a strange way, I was glad that Poseidon was so distant. If he tried to apologize or told me he loved me, or even smiled, it would have felt fake. Like a human dad trying to make some lame excuse for not being around. But I could live with that. After all, I wasn't sure about him yet either. Address Lord Zeus, boy, Poseidon told me. Tell him your story. So I told Zeus everything, just as it had happened. I took out the metal cylinder, which had begun sparking in the sky god's presence, and laid it at his feet. There was a long silence, broken only by the cackle of the earth fire. Zeus opened his palm. The lightning bolt flew into it. As he closed his fist, the metallic points flared with electricity until he was holding what looked more like the classic thunderbolt. Looked more than like the classic thunderbolt, a 20-foot javelin of arcing, hissing energy that made the hairs on my scalp rise. I sense the boy tells the truth, Zeus muttered, but that Ares would do such a thing, that is most unlike him. He is proud and impulsive, Poseidon said. It runs in the family. Lord, I asked. They both said, yes. Ares didn't act alone. Someone else, something else came up with the idea. I described my dreams and the feeling I had on the beach, that momentary breath of evil that seemed to stop the world and made Ares back off from killing me. In the dreams, I said, the voice told me to bring the bolt to the underworld. Ares hinted that he had been having dreams too. I think he was being used, just as I was, to start a war. You're accusing Hades after all, Zeus said. No, I said. I mean, Lord Zeus, I've been in the presence of Hades. This feeling on the beach was different. It was the same thing I felt when I got close to that pit. That was the entrance of Tartarus, wasn't it? Something powerful and evil is stirring down there. Something even older than the gods. Poseidon and Zeus looked at each other. They had a quick, intense discussion in ancient Greek. I only caught one word. Father. Poseidon made some kind of suggestion, but Zeus cut him off. Poseidon tried to argue. Zeus held up his hand angrily. We will speak of this no more, Zeus said. I must go personally to purify this thunderbolt in the waters of Lemnos, to remove the human taint from its metal. He rose and looked at me. His expression softened just a fraction of a degree. You have done me a service, boy. Few heroes could have accomplished as much. I had help, sir, I said. Grover Underwood and Annabeth Chase. To show you my thanks, I shall spare your life. I do not trust you, Percy Jackson. I do not like what your arrival means for the future of Olympus. But for the sake of peace in the family, I shall let you live. Thank you, sir. Do not presume to fly again. Do not let me find you here when I return. Otherwise, you shall taste this bolt, and it shall be your last sensation. Thunder shook the palace. With a blinding flash of lightning, Zeus was gone. I was alone in the throne room with my father. Your uncle, Poseidon sighed. Has always had a flair for dramatic exits. I think he would have done well as the god of theater. An uncomfortable silence. Sir, I said, what was in the pit? Poseidon regarded me. Have you not guessed? Kronos, I said, the king of the Titans. Even in the throne room of Olympus, far away from Tartarus, the name Kronos darkened the room, made the earth fire seem not so quite warm on my back. Poseidon gripped his trident. In the first war, Percy, Zeus cut our father Kronos into 1,000 pieces, just as Kronos had done to his own father, Aranos. Zeus cast Kronos' remains into the darkest pit of Tartarus. The Titan army was scattered. Their mountain fortress on Etna was destroyed, their monstrous allies driven to the farthest corners of the earth. And yet the Titans cannot die, any more than we gods can. Whatever is left of Kronos is still alive in some hideous way, still conscious in his eternal pain, still hungering for power. He's healing, I said. He's coming back. Poseidon shook his head. From time to time, over eons, Kronos is stirred. He enters men's nightmares and breathes evil thoughts. He wakens restless monsters from the depths, but to suggest he could rise from the pit, that's another thing. That's what he intends, Father. That's what he said. Poseidon was quiet for a long time. Lord Zeus has closed the discussion on this matter. He will not allow talk of Kronos. You have completed your quest, child. That is all you need to do. But, I stopped myself. Arguing would do no good. It would very possibly anger the only God who I had on my side. As you wish, Father. A faint smile played on his lips. Obedience does not come naturally to you, does it? No, sir. I must take some blame for that, I suppose. The sea does not like to be restrained. He rose to his full height and took up his trident. Then he shimmered and became the size of a regular man, standing directly in front of me. You must go, child. But first, know your mother has returned. I stared at him, completely stunned. My mother? You will find her at home. Hades sent her when you recovered his helm. Even the Lord of the Death pays his debts. My heart was pounding. I couldn't believe it. Would you? I wanted to ask Poseidon if he would come with me to see her, but I realized that was ridiculous. I imagined loading the god of the sea into a taxi and taking him to the Upper East Side. If he wanted to see my mom all these years, he would have. And there was Smelly Gabe to think about. Poseidon's eyes took on a little sadness. When you were born, Percy, when you return home, Percy, you must make an important choice. You will find a package waiting in your room. A package? You will understand when you see it. No one can choose your path, Percy. You must decide. I nodded, although I didn't know what he meant. Your mother is a queen among women, Poseidon said wistfully. I had not met such a mortal woman in all those years. Still, I am sorry you were born, child. I have brought you a hero's fate. A hero's fate is never happy. It is never anything but tragic. I tried not to feel hurt. Here was my own dad telling me he was sorry I had been born. I don't mind, Father. Not yet, perhaps, he said. Not yet. But it was an unforgivable mistake on my part. I'll leave you then. I bowed awkwardly. I won't bother you again. I was 5 steps away when he called, Perseus. I turned. There was a different light in his eyes, a fiery kind of pride. You did well, Perseus. Do not misunderstand me. Whatever else you do, you are mine. You are a true son of the sea god. I walked back through the city of gods, and conversations stopped. The muses paused their concert. People, satyrs, and naiads all turned toward me, their faces filled with respect and gratitude. And as I passed, they knelt as if I were some kind of hero. We're going to pause there for part 1. Watch for part 2. Bye.